This is our Disney News Hour, and many thanks for joining us with the news. I'm Shifarao Lako. Do stay with us. The Ethiopian Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Demeke Mekonnen met Friday with the UN Under-Secretary General for the Department of Operational Support, Atul Karib. During the meeting, the Deputy Prime Minister expressed the positive role of the Ethiopian peacekeeping force in the UN and highlighted the long-standing history of Ethiopia's peacekeeping mission in the UN. The Deputy Prime Minister also said the United Nations Interim Security Force for Abyei has been playing a very constructive role in maintaining peace and stability in Abyei, although confronted with various challenges. He assured the Under-Secretary General of the continued support of Ethiopia to the UN, while Atul, on his part, appreciated the role of Ethiopia in the UN peacekeeping mission. A university professor in the United States of America says Western governments did not show the same eagerness to express their condemnations during the 27 years of the TPLF's horrific rule in Ethiopia. The professor's article on the Ethiopian Observer discloses how the Western world is crusading against Ethiopia and the insidious face of racism. Alula Taklamariam presents the following story from the Ethiopian Observer.
In his opinion posted on Ethiopian Observer, Dayton University Professor Mesai Kebede said one thing that has been most incomprehensible for many Ethiopian observers, activists and politicians is the barrage of one-sided criticisms coming from Western capitals since the eruption in November of an armed conflict between the federal government and the TPLF's controlled northern region of Tigray. Directed exclusively against the federal government, the criticisms were soon followed by the implementation of various sanctions that elevated the surprise to the level of utter consternation. According to Mesai, the deep difference over the direction of the country under the reformist leadership of the Prime Minister constituted the underlying cause of the conflict. The immediate cause of the war, however, was a surprise attack of TPLF forces on the National Defense Forces stationed in Tigray. In light of the sudden and unprovoked attack on the Ethiopian National Forces, the expectation of the Ethiopian government and most Ethiopians was that Western governments and opinions would see the Ethiopian counteroffensive as a legitimate move of self-defense and law enforcement. He also added the expectation never came to fruition. Instead, the Ethiopian troops were accused of a host of violations that included the killings of innocent civilians, the rapes of women, the deliberate destruction of properties, and last but not least, the engagement in genocidal acts. To make matters worse, the involvement in the counter-offensive of Eritrean troops and the Amhara militia forces, both reputed to be quite hostile to Tigrayan leaders and elites, made the accusation of massive human rights violation even more credible. The end result of all this is that everything was turned upside down. The attacker was seen as a victim. The Ethiopian surprise is all the harder to contain as Western governments did not show the same eagerness to express their condemnation during the 27 years of the TPLF's horrific rule of Ethiopia. For any impartial observer, the silence of Western governments on the far-reaching violations of human rights during the TPLF's tyrannical rule of Ethiopia is proof enough that the accusation of systematic, widespread, and gross violations of human rights by Ethiopian, Eritrean, and Amhara armed forces is just a smokescreen for underlying geopolitical concerns. According to the Western assessment, not only the bellicose relation between Tigray and the federal government aggravating the ethnic tensions internal to Ethiopia, but also the involvement of Eritrean troops will have a destabilizing impact on the entire Horn of Africa. In addition, the current dispute between Ethiopia, Egypt, and Sudan over the Nile Dam and the looming war with Sudan over border disputes have the potential of igniting the flame of war across the whole region. To prevent all these calamities from happening, the Western position prescribes the restoration of peace in Tigray through a negotiated settlement with the TPLF as the first necessary step, even though the TPLF, which started an unprovoked war, is severely incapacitated as a result of its crushing military defeat. The negotiation should be extended to all other opposing parties with the goal of reaching a wider national reconciliation process in Ethiopia, the critic in his personal observation said.
The TPLF terrorist group is not using the unilateral ceasefire agreement decision made by the federal government to provide humanitarian activities in the state of Tigray, and it has been exerting terrorist offensives in several areas of Amhara region only 2 weeks after the ceasefire. Following this, Hawassa and Jigjiga city residents told ETV that they are ready to defend the threat TPLF posed against the sovereignty of Ethiopia. Here is what they said.
The TPLF gangs have opted toward peace. Unfortunately, we are also observing they are recruiting child soldiers by violating the international human rights laws. TPLF is working to divert and defame Ethiopia's effort to ensure peace and stability by declaring unilateral ceasefire.
All Ethiopians are standing together to defend the nation's unity against TPLF. Thus, all regional states are coming together to restore peace in the northern part of the nation. The efforts of the general public are also remarkable. I want to say we are ready to pay any sacrifice to our motherland.
The government of Ethiopia is offering peace to the TPLF junta, but they rejected this peace offer. They are also choosing war and conflict in Raya and Wolqayt areas instead of Amhara. This move is outdated fashion to our country. Personally, I feel it's better to accept the peace offer made by the federal government.
Now the TPLF mafias are recruiting children and women in the front line to take war with the Ethiopian Defense Force. Thus, we have to stand together to take proper measures against the TPLF forces. I think we have to stand by the side of our government. If we stand together, we can fix this problem in our country. We can also save the lives of thousands of our children in Tigray, who the TPLF recruited and will recruit as soldiers.
The government should take proper and strict measures. It's now time to negotiate with them. It needs immediate action. We are very ready to take an action along with the government.
A unilateral ceasefire was put into place, implemented by the central government. I think that is a good move, even a very strategic one. It would enhance humanitarian assistance.
Now the Ethiopian forces are very much concentrating on the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam area, the Sudanese-Ethiopian border. They want to destroy that attention.
The unilateral ceasefire proclaimed by the federal government was, I think, based on humanitarian reasons.
They are trying to pull in, you see, they are trying to create a kind of magnetic field for the Ethiopian forces to come in, back into Tigray and disrupt the farming season.
Now, moving on, different regional states are joining the campaign to fight against the TPLF. The Redawa and the Gambela regions set to send police forces in support of the Amhara regional state and the Ethiopian National Defense Force. Alula Taklamaran presents the following story.
Various regional states expressed their solidarity with the National Army and the Amhara regional state for a new offensive against the TPLF in the northern part of the country. Some of them have already sent their regional police forces, while others are planning to do so. The Dredaw and Gambela regional states have lately joined the campaign to back the Ethiopian National Defense Force. On top of that, the Gambela Regional Council unanimously accepted the call from the federal and Amhara governments in defending Ethiopia's sovereignty.
We decided to contribute our level best and accept the national call for safeguarding our nation. This could not be left to Amhara or other Afar regions. It rather is a matter of sovereignty. So the Gambela regional government is always committed to back the national army when it is necessary.
Meanwhile, the Dredawa city administration made a farewell ceremony to its police forces who are going to back the Ethiopian National Defense Force fighting the TPLF. Speaking on the event, Dredawa City Mayor Ahmed Mohamed Boh commended the gallantry of the police forces in maintaining peace and security of the city, expressing his confidence to double that again in the battlefield.
You, the heroes and pride of Dredawa, you need to discharge your national responsibility in fighting internal and external enemies as you did to stabilize the city of Dredawa. We, the government and people of Dredawa, are always with you. We accept this call happily, and we feel pride when we send our heroic sons to the war front.
A legal expert condemns TPLF's brazen act of recruiting child soldiers and its expansionist tendencies weeks after the federal government announced a unilateral ceasefire. The act, says the legal expert Charanet Hordofa, constitutes a war crime. Sadly, however, the international community has failed to denounce the act. It is rather encouraging the TPLF to advance to neighboring Amhara territories. Goshu Melissa reports.
The TPLF has rebuked a unilateral ceasefire declared by the government of Abiy Ahmed, rather bent on advancing to neighboring Amhara. In its wanton disregard of international law, the TPLF is recruiting thousands of child soldiers as well as youths numbed with narcotics. Talking to ETV English, legal expert Charanet Hordofa blamed the international community for failing to discharge its responsibility of denouncing TPLF's war crime.
The international law, child soldier is a war crime. Recruiting child soldiers subjects the recruiter to a war crime. Okay, this has happened all over the world. They have been condemning in the rest part of the world. But the international community, now the international media are making mockery out of this. Okay, they are saying the young and energized Tigray Defense Force have retaken territories and beaten the federal government. This is what they are saying. This is really sad to hear from such established institutions.
Charanet said the US and its Western allies have lent deaf ears to Ethiopia's appeal for respect of the ceasefire and international law.
They were one-sided. They were following their national interests. Okay, it is them who have, re-escalated the conflict in Tigray. They gave deaf ear to child soldiers. They give deaf ear to the, mass killings, massive evictions, okay? The humanitarian crisis, the escalations, even the escalation, the aggression by the junta. By the escalation by the junta. So they simply hammered the federal government.
The international community has been active objecting to such acts elsewhere, but in Ethiopian case, it has displayed sheer double standard, he pointed out.
One thing must be clear. The law which provides that a child should not be recruited for army has its foundation in the West. Okay? Sovereignty of a nation is propounded by the West. Law enforcement concepts are propounded by the West. Now the West is going against its own ideals when it comes to Ethiopia. So Ethiopia should continue to expose, okay, the wrongdoings of this junta.
Reflecting on the one-sided nature of the Western media outlets and most of the international community, Alamayo Aradda for his part said the intent of TPLF in arming children is to expose them to heavy fighting and shift blames on the Ethiopian government.
And what do? You see, they give one Kalashnikov to a very young person probably not older than 12. And there will be others who will be following him. And they think that if the Ethiopian forces kill these youngsters and then they spread it within the media of the international media and claim that the Ethiopian forces are killing children.
But since the TPLF, as hinted by some of its leaders like Getachew Reda, may advance all the way to Addis Ababa, if left unchecked, Chernet urged the federal government to intensify defense and effectively repels its aggression in the border areas.
The escalation of the conflict is, I think, designed to spread the conflict all over the nation, to take it to the Amhara region, to take it to the Afar region, and if possible, throughout the country. So I think if that is allowed, it is very dangerous for the national unity and integrity of the nation. So the government should continue in enforcing the law. The law enforcement process must continue.
Some aid agencies and humanitarian operators use aid as mask to secure their national interest and rescue TPLF. He said the government needs to be very cautious.
The TPLF terrorist group has extended its offensive on the pastoral community in Afar at the bordering area with Tigray. Following the terrorists' offensive, Afar Regional State says the security forces in the region, the pastoral community in Afar, along with regional government and other forces from different parts of the country, are fending off the offensive by the terrorist group. The regional government also calls upon all Ethiopians to help put an end to the TPLF terrorist group.
Do solemnly swear that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
And finally, the Amnesty International has slammed Libya and Europe over horrific abuse of migrants. A report by human rights group Amnesty International has revealed new evidence of the abuse of migrants intercepted at sea and forcefully returned to detention centers in Libya. Habtamu Ashagri has more on that from CGTN.
On this story, the report on migrants by Amnesty International focuses on those intercepted in the Mediterranean and returned to Libya in 2020 and 2021. Details of worsening conditions in migrant camps have emerged, while some describe experience in sexual violence at the hands of the guards.
For instance, in one center that's specifically designated for vulnerable groups, formerly detained women told Amnesty International that they had been, that women at the center had been raped by guards, that they that they attempted to coerce them into sex in exchange for food or clean water, and that those who attempted to resist were severely beaten.
The new findings follow multiple such reports that they emerged since 2017 of the mistreatment and torture of migrants.
This is very significant, as this year the Libyan Coast Guards have intercepted and returned around 15,000 refugees and migrants in the first 6 months of 2021 alone. This is more than all of last year combined.
United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres has called for the closure of the facilities.
There is a very large disparity between the number of those that were taken to these centers and those that are registered as or have been counted as remaining in those centers. And the report highlights a number of ways that individuals may leave or be removed from detention, either by escaping, by paying ransoms for their release, by being transferred to other centers, at times due to death because of cruel and inhumane detention conditions, by denial of access to medical care. And it's very concerning that there's no secure or comprehensive registration system that allows the tracking or tracing of their ultimate whereabouts.
United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres has called for the closure of the facilities. Despite a truce between Libya's warring factions since October, armed groups are said to still hold power on the ground, with some controlling migrants.
And now a quick reminder of the top stories before we go. U.S. University professor says Western governments were not eager to condemn TPLF's 27-year-long horrific human rule. And Amnesty slams Libya and Europe over horrific abuse of migrants. And with that, we come to the end